And just like that, we are live. Welcome, everyone. Hey, Kim, how are you today?
I'm here.
Good, good. I want to welcome all of our listeners to another edition of the Speaking Bluntly podcast. This is CJ or Carlos, whichever you care to call me. I'm perfectly fine with that either way. And I'm here with my co-host, Kim McCarthy. And I want to welcome everyone to another edition of the Speaking Bluntly podcast. And we're very excited to be multi-streaming on our various platforms. You can catch us on YouTube, our Facebook platforms, everything else that we're associated with. And my gosh, Kim, I feel like we should begin this conversation talking about the coronavirus, but we're here to talk about cannabis instead.
But you know what? Let's take the fear out of all of the COVID-19 stuff. Um, the truth is, proper hygiene is really going to protect you.
Right. Wash
So
your hands.
exactly.
If you cough, maybe cough into, into your sleeve.
Yeah. Clean out your fingernails. Junk likes to live in there.
And
Yeah.
if
So
you're running a fever or if you're sick, don't go to work and don't send your child to school.
you
I mean,
know,
that's all common sense stuff, right?
from a human resources perspective, um, stay home because one person sick infects clearly the office, but then that has a domino effect and clearly on supply chain, on productivity, on production, on output, on all those things. And it's so much easier. And believe me, I'm a workaholic. It's so much easier to say, it's okay. I'll go to work and get this done. So you don't have to deal with it, when the days ahead.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's just not the plan.
Right.
So say and don't give your kids Benadryl or ibuprofen or whatever and send them to school because you don't want to deal with them.
Yeah, just mask. Yeah, just mask the fever that's associated with
Yeah,
it versus allowing the body to do its part. So yeah, that's the same message that we've been echoing on the entire Rogue platform is just individual health. Maybe take some vitamin C, take some vitamin D. As it relates to our industry, there is promising studies to show that CBN is very much a potential anti works against definitely its properties to help with different health situations and potential antibiotic. We can't label it that, but from early research and studies are very promising regarding CBN as an antibiotic.
exactly. Um, I was waiting for the wonderful transition, and that is when you get into um, homeopathic health and whole plant health, whatever plant, if that's a citrus tree, if that, whatever plant that is, it's going to be providing a whole health. We just happen to know that cannabis, it's made for the body and it's made to keep us healthy and provide that homeostasis within.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say if you have access to it, then please do it from a whole plant health perspective in terms of how can I improve my health.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that discouraged me that I'm getting just a little bit upset with is just I don't think for the most part some of the media understand their responsibility to report accurate information, and there's just unfortunately there's so much fear mongering going on that you have people who may not understand, or not necessarily, maybe that's not the proper word, but who are more concerned, who legitimately should be. So you have elderly people who are seeing this across their news stream 24/7, and now they're worried about, hey, do I have the proper stuff at home, or do I need to go get an air purifier, all these things associated with it. So yeah, so there's some very much common sense things as we approach this, and I don't want to downplay as far as hey, yeah, there are risks, but when you take a look at numerous other things, whether it's the common flu that kills probably more people than so far has the coronavirus. I think there's other things to be concerned with and monitor. But I think what you said is just so important. There's a lot of common sense thing as far as hygiene, some things that we can do to make sure that we steer clear of this virus.
Yeah, and to keep it in our industry, um, while remaining on topic, think about ways that you can utilize hemp products. So for example, um, the face masks. Who needs them right now? Medical and healthcare professionals. Someone who's going to a grocery store doesn't need that. However, if you are out in public, well, here's a great opportunity. Why not purchase a hemp textile, like a
Mm,
hemp bandana, or the company Hip to Be Hemp? They make hemp. They're the only ones who make hemp air filters, and they are the most efficient ones. So if it works in your house,
hmm.
I'm sure you can use hemp fiber, yeah, textile fiber, to wear a mask at this time if
Right.
that's needed.
Yeah, and I do want to speak a little bit in regards to the other aspect of the industry application as it relates to hemp. And for the most part, there's been a lot of news. I'm not sure if you saw it today that Canopy Growth has announced they're laying off a lot of workers as it applies to our industry. And not that I think it's necessarily a good thing. However, knowing that potentially there could be some disruptions in terms of imports, some things associated with that, we know that a lot of foreign producers of hemp and textile hemp in general can do the work significantly a lot cheaper than American growers. That's just a known fact. So perhaps with this disruption, that maybe that could protect a little bit of the pricing as it relates to American hemp, versus the abundance of hemp related, whether it's isolate, different things that are becoming available from other countries, because it is getting darn right very competitive out there with our industry, and it's putting a lot of people with a lot of caution flags, and rightfully so. I don't want to see any particular individual, grower or farmer start to, jump in industry and invest, lots of money into their crops, and then there's no buyer at the end. So maybe this perhaps provides a little bit of opportunity to maintain and to consistently have a pricing that's reflected upon the availability, and not necessarily like a race to the bottom, which is kind of like currently happening right now in our industry.
Yeah, you know. Okay, so um, what I'm what I'm about to share with you is based off of um, headlines, basically headlines, or just little bits and bytes of information that as I'm scrolling by or flipping through. But um, I don't understand why America, just why the United States isn't utilizing the hemp industry to its fullest potential. Because you have these other countries, and now it's been a while. So sorry if I'm wrong, but I think it's Taiwan or
Yep.
Thailand,
Yep.
where the government is basically giving subsidies to private citizens who are growing on behalf of the government. And then the government takes that raw product and then makes it into other stuff that will obviously benefit the country in some way, shape, or form. Um, there are a lot of, you see, I don't want to say a lot, but I've seen at least a handful of similar headlines. Now, I don't go in the detail of it, and I don't know the arguments against
Hmm.
every
Well, it's
prohibition.
and it's hard sometimes not to get political around the discussion with our industry. But unfortunately, I think it's time that we admit some facts, and that pertains to the current administration, how they're approaching our industry. There were numerous bills this year, whether it was the Senate Banking Finance to allow cannabis and hemp related businesses to participate in FDIC related banks. That's a no brainer, right?
Right.
If the current economic model is that it's failing, it's struggling, you're having the Fed pump in billions of dollars in overnight repos to allow the banks to borrow money because they have no liquidity to pay out their debt and their interest, so they're having to borrow money from the Fed and pay it back the next day. Why wouldn't you allow an industry that for the most part is a cash-based business to participate in the banking? That to me is a no-brainer, right? It shouldn't even be a question. It should just be allow it. But unfortunately, I don't have the article up, and I think before we message each other a little bit through the course of the day, there was one thing that I was going to talk about, and that's the fact that in an interview, Steve Mnuchin, who is the current he's not the treasurer. I can't remember his name. He's a producer. Most people don't know this, but Steve Mnuchin, who's currently in the finance administration, he actually produced Lego. The Lego Movie Part 2. He's actually a producer as well, but he's in finance. He actually specifically was point blank asked that, hey, look, is there going to be an agenda for this year to allow cannabis related businesses to participate in the traditional banking and finance and allow them to? And he just openly just said, hey, that's not on our radar. That's not in our interest right now to do it. So I think we need to have to call it what it is, that right now this current administration is not being as friendly as it should to our industry. And it's very frustrating because, like what you alluded to, numerous of aspects of our industry, whether it's manufacturing, textiles, health related products, there's numerous things that can be, created. And for us not to be taking advantage of that and looking at that and saying, hey, let's not export manufacturing once again, like we've done with numerous industries, whether it's automobile or pharmaceuticals. Let's not allow the export of hemp related products to be developed and exploded in other countries. Let's do that here in the United States, and let's have a government that supports this industry so that we can prosper, that we can see individual companies succeed in our space.
Exactly. I honestly can't remember, but I'm pretty sure.
Hey, Danny, welcome to the show, Danny. Good to see you.
But I believe Mother Teresa, she may not have been the originator of the thought, but she definitely reiterated the statement, and that is, it honestly, it's. I need to word it right so as not to offend.
Don't worry about offending.
So
don't worry about offending people.
No. It just comes back to what is good for the people, and it gets into a political statement to say that we're working for the people, and we're here to make each other better and to provide a better community, and all these better. But then and here's where the political stuff comes in. There's a wall, regardless of whatever political party you sway to. If you focus on the war on drugs, okay, that's so it applies to us. The war on drugs, there's always going to be a war on something.
Mm-hmm.
Many spiritualists and philosophers have said the same thing. But when you focus on something positive, like say, we're not going to have a war on peace, we wouldn't have a war on anything that you want. But you always have wars on things you don't want. And when you do that, you end up having all more of the antagonistic result.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, if you were to have an all out, pursuant of peace, pursuant of health, in that way, then there would be more of a focus on helping each other and making sure that we're all safe and healthy, instead of hoarding, here's what's mine, and having nationalist views and perspectives that really hurt the world.
Mm-hmm.
Getting back to the coronavirus, I'm not on social media for personal purposes. I'd say 93% or so of the time. But I get personal things that go through my feed.
Sure.
I am appalled at the ignorance, the stupidity, and the flagrant remarks that people are willing to make in light of the pandemic that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And that should never, ever come down to an ethnicity, to a culture, because you choose to eat a certain, honestly, it was about eating. And I was really surprised about that. I think that the world, we just really need to focus more on what's going to help us, what's going to build us, what's going to make us stronger, bigger, better.
Mm-hmm.
The $6 million man, but now cost of living, it's a $6 billion man.
Inflation. Yep.
Yeah. But anyway, that was a tangent, and I know it's politically fueled and not meant to be. I just wish that we had fewer wars on fill in the blank and had more about how we can help each other. Because when we do that, then you eliminate that antagonistic us against them and we're better,
Oh, amen. Yeah, I completely agree. I think you nailed it. I think you touched base on a lot of important things that, as it relates to matters in life, and that's why I was so excited about the hemp and the cannabis industry, Kim, is that it provided that. It was that unique opportunity for people to reach a different level of consciousness, a consciousness of freedom, about liberty, and that entire movement. And it's not going anywhere. It's still here today, and we can get through this thing if we understand what's coming at us and how we approach it. And that's why I think the work that we are doing, whether it's our Speaking Bluntly podcast that we're doing today or the different platforms that we operate in. You've had a very busy month, Kim, and I want to give you an opportunity to talk about, like, you just had the March edition of Harvest and Plume magazine come out, and the cannabis session. So let's go ahead and fire up the screen share, and let's talk about some of these great things that you've had going on. So let's start first with Harvest and Plume and the March 2020 edition of the Elora Caves. Let's walk through this.
These are so amazing. This is one of probably 5 top things I love about being the editor-in-chief of the magazines and being able to literally handpick or curate information. So the Elora Caves are from India, and it turns out that there are 3 different religions that are celebrated within these 34 caves. Like 12 are dedicated to Buddhists, temples to Buddhists, another to Hindus, and another to, and now I forgot the starts with a J.
You have them listed here. Thoughts? No, that's just contents. Never mind. The stable content. Sorry, I thought that was 12 listed there. I don't have my glasses on, Kim.
So the
where are my glasses? Good.
These caves they're carved, they're chiseled. They weren't like stacked on top of each other by forming bricks or other product on top. These were carved out of rock, and it's, gosh, I think it's like,
you can see it through the textures. You can see, if you look through the texture of those, you can see the rock. That's amazing. Just amazing that they were able to do that.
So they're not only architectural feats, but in terms of religion, it shows how tolerant they were and accepting to have these places of worship or otherwise, these temples so close to each other. But here's where we come back to our industry, and that is, so some of the art structures were either formed or protected with a hemp lime mud plaster. And they found this out because there are some other caves that were built like in the 2 BCE, I believe it was. And they have some insect damage. Well, guess what? One of the benefits of hemp is resistant to pests.
Yes.
As a result,
yes, indeed.
These caves are over 1,500 years old and hemp strong. So we have these structures in Europe that they've proven to be 800 years old, and the hemp structures are still very strong. But now we have this in India that's 1,500 years old.
Wow.
Insects haven't destroyed it. The environment hasn't. So read about it. If you're a traveler, go. Why not? That would be so awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and if I would not have tuned in to the March edition of Harvest and Plume, I would never have learned about this.
It is fun. That is definitely the fun stuff. And there are a couple of videos in there as well that you can just sit and watch, learn more about them.
Very cool. Very cool. And it looks like you touched base on something very intriguing, and that's hospice and cannabis care, cannabidiol. Yep.
So every month I try for either both or one or the other magazines. There's always a holiday that we can celebrate somewhere along with our industry. So last month we had Women in History, Marijuana Awareness, and Black History. So we combined those 3. Well, this month it's Caregiver Awareness. And from there, the Caregiver Awareness is actually in the cannabis sessions. But we had the carryover, the crop into Harvest and Plume to talk about how important cannabinoid therapy for hospice and palliative care. And there's not enough of this of formal scientific studies. However, everyone has really said, listen, this is invaluable and it needs to be covered by insurance, because hospice is supposed to take care of all those needs. But if you have like 60% of your patients who are not only asking about cannabis care, but also access to it, um, it needs to be provided.
Mm-hmm.
And it can't, and so there's a conflict. So we put that in the magazine so we could start the discussion, and hopefully some improvements can be made. And I don't know how many people are actually going to get how I thought that was hilarious. You have who knows who those characters are? I do. Does anyone else?
Oh, yeah, I know who they are. Yeah. I mean, I haven't watched any episodes or anything like, forever, but I know who they are. Just the facts, ma'am. Just the facts.
I can so hear his voice. Yeah. So here we talk about.
Careful, Kimmy. Might be showing your age. No, just
Oh
kidding
yeah.
you.
Oh yeah. It's there.
I'm just kidding you. Just,
So
I think
now
you,
we're
go ahead.
finding so much more about the phytocannabinoids. And even though I came out of the cannabis closet quite some time ago on the hemp side, the education just keeps coming in, and it's so amazing. So now they're finding out about CBG and CBGA, and that if you think about it in terms of family tree structure, CBGA is the mother of all the other, at this time, that's what they know.
Mm-hmm.
It's the mother of all cannabinoids, and how it breaks down, and how, and this comes back to the packaging. Matter of fact, I think I posted, I know I did, I posted and tagged you in it because it was talking about labeling. And I, I, I was talking to my husband about, excuse me, how important the labeling is now, with the QR code to take a snapshot of that and then find out exactly what's in your flower. What are you smoking? Not of course, pesticides and whatnot, but you want to know how to medicate yourself,
Mm-hmm.
how to maintain balance in your body. If you're popping vitamin E, C, D, B, multis, and all that, wouldn't you want to know, right?
You,
How to properly, um, I don't like to say medicate because I don't like the word medicate, but how to keep your body in balance.
I, it is important. And when you posted this, and I apologize, I didn't respond. So it looks like on this QR code and what it's populating to that image when you scan it, it looks like the URL is broken on the QR code, so it's not going to the proper testing results for that QR code. So that's what's happening, is that that product, when you hit it, typically it will go to a testing domain internet address, and it'll show you the testing results. Now, what a lot of companies have done, and I have mixed opinion about this, is what they've done instead is they've actually linked that to their own company website, and then within the company website will be a list of all their products and different lots. And it's not easy. It's not easy for the consumer to manage through that. And I'm in the industry, and there's some products that I scan, and I have difficulty with doing that. And even within some of the companies that I've operated, that has came up, is that, well, why don't we just do a website or one URL and then just post all of our testing results there instead? And I've been hesitant. And the reason that I've been hesitant is because I think that this QR code is what you alluded to. It's important for the consumer, and they shouldn't have to navigate around and figure out what's there or how to get to that reporting. And it's one area for our industry that I think that does need some work on, because I know that there are specific products. For example, if you're buying distillate from a hemp grower, and then you're taking that distillate and using it to manufacture certain products. I've seen products that are manufactured, and then what they'll do is they'll actually put a link to the actual testing results from the farmer or the grow, and not from the end product that they've manufactured. And so So I'm a little bit torn because I think that creates, some issues, and I think at the end of the day, the companies who are doing that, who do have a very transparent way of testing and sharing that information with customers, are going to win. But also at the same time, I'm like, wait a minute. When I go buy a bottle of ibuprofen off the shelf and the label reads 250 milligrams, how do I really know that each pill really has 250 milligrams? When I go buy a bottle of a can or a package of Sudafed or acetaminophen that lists the acetamin, or not acetaminophen, what's the antihistamine at 10 milligrams of whatever it is, how do I know that that truly has 10 milligrams in it? Now I know that there are manufacturing practices and tests that are associated with those manufacturing things, but this industry is one of the only one that's really, forced to take this level of testing and place it on there. I think it's the right thing to do because we know that there's going to be some issues that transpire, and we've witnessed some of those. The perfect example that I can give is just the black market THC vapes that were produced that were actually killing people, and that's the most severe situation that you look at. But I think it's an important component. And again, I think if companies, the way that we approach it with our company is that, we take a look at best practices for medical cannabis states. And right now, for cannabis states who are producing medical cannabis edibles, some states, I don't want to paint with too broad of a brush, but most of them require you to test at least twice a year on your edibles based upon that. Some states institute per batch. So any batch that you produce, that batch needs to be tested, which even gets, more expensive to do that. So at the end of the day, I think that, those that follow those best testing practices and that transparency there's with the customer. And so when I saw this post, I kind of knew immediately what it was. It's just a matter that QR code's a bad QR code. And when someone's hitting that with their phone, it's taking them to a bad URL that's not connecting to anything. So it's basically like a failed QR code.
Well, that post started because going back to the magazine, the family tree, I was explaining to my husband how important the breaking down for you to, yes, it's when you excuse me, when you scan the QR code, you should be able to have a breakdown. Way back when in the 80s, and I'm sure before, you were lucky to get stems and seeds. It didn't matter what you got. You didn't even care what you got. You just got it. And now it's, ooh, I have Skywalker, or I have Pineapple Kush, or I have, so now it's all very, what's the word I'm looking for? Like elegant, like what, anyway. And more importantly, that THC, last time I said it too, THC is becoming very, very insignificant now when you start looking at the bigger picture. So with that QR code, I was saying what's more important than THC is how much CBN is in there. If you're looking to sleep, or these other issues, where before we thought it was the THC that gave you the indica, gave you that indica or in the couch feeling with regard to THC. And now that's not necessarily true. So, more and more, we're just pushing that THC to the side, and all these cannabinoid, CB, fill in the blank, are all coming up. And that's the stuff I love being able to educate people about, because now they're asking questions. And I love that because okay, very quickly, on the way to Vegas, to the USA CBD Expo.
Yeah.
So sitting next to me was an engineer, civil engineer from Colorado School of Mines. If anyone doesn't know that school, it actually is more difficult and challenging to get into and stay in than Harvard. They weed out until junior year. They only do engineering degrees. So anyway, I've got a smart kid next to me. He seems to be kind of open. He's going to Vegas to boost it up. That's all he's doing. But he has this belief system around cannabis. So, and this cracks me up, as I'm educating him and telling him information that I was just writing about in the magazines, he was, well, I'm going to take devil's advocate. And sweetheart, you can never take a devil's advocate position until you know what you're advocating. So why don't you start listening to the information you're receiving? And I'm telling you where to find that information so you can go into more detail. Don't try to keep rebutting everything, you know?
Yeah.
So, and he kind of thought about that and said, okay. And he took the engineer head because engineers are black and white, which I love. And he just said, you're right. I need to look at this black and white. More people do that, please.
Very interesting take. Yeah, and I agree. So, and then I caught this blurb, and I was going to text you or ask you about it, but it's very exciting news to share that you're going to be doing some work with the Steve D'Angelo's program. So, why don't you share a little bit around the Last Prisoner Project and what you're partnering with to help amplify that message, Kim?
Thank you. And one podcast, we're just going to have it dedicated to this. Briefly, the Last Prisoner Project is about individuals with a cannabis crime and either getting them out of the incarceration or when they come out, they have it on their record. So they're virtually unemployable, which is silly. It is absolute silliness. I've said it so many times. And as a professional, my primary brand is the Pipeline Strategies. And that's all about people strategies and from a recruiting and talent acquisition perspective, training and leadership development and all. And everyone has a skill set and how they can contribute. So you have these people who are coming through the Last Prisoner Project. Their Last Prisoner Project has their kind of splinters out in different ways of how they're helping the community. And one of them is to say, not only can we help you perhaps from a legal perspective, if you're going into a trial or defending yourself in some way, shape, or form, not for two joints. Let's be honest, they're not going to be hitting you up for two joints. But and there's someone else that I do want to bring in at some time. I don't want to mention her name at this time.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to go into detail about that. But in terms of employment, now it's recidivism. You come out and now you're stuck. How do you succeed?
Mm-hmm.
And you have these people who the first profile given to me. I don't want to say his name yet because he and I have yet to talk. But he has tons of startup executive experience. He's an analyst. He highly educated.
Oh,
A couple
awesome.
of his roles were as CEO and board member, and he's unemployable now.
Mm,
That is
mm.
silliness. That man has so much skill and knowledge to bring to. He wants to be in the cannabis industry, but he can apply that to so many other industries and brands, and people are missing out big time. So here I am from the Pipeline Strategies to bridge that, and we welcome the brands to work with us. Um, a lot of these people want to stay in the cannabis industry, which I completely understand. There's a lot of passion there.
Yep.
Talk to me. Find out how we can get these people employed and being useful members of society instead of putting them back into the system.
Absolutely. It's very very important work that you're helping with, and I completely agree. Is that how do we take those percentages of people who have been convicted of those very low crimes who now can't are deemed unemployable, I guess you could say, that potentially leads them to commit another crime or something just simply because they're trying to feed their family or take care of a family member who has a certain health condition. So yeah, I applaud your work with that. And Kim, while you're there, why don't we just go ahead and plug your work so our listeners are aware of all the different things that you're doing and the exciting things that you're doing in our industry.
Yep. Well, let's start from the top down. So I have the Pipeline Strategies, and excuse me, that's all about people strategies. Within that, specific to recruiting, there's Pipeline Recruiting, and then of course we have in the marketing area the two magazines, and that'd be Harvest and Plume, and almost all of the social media is Harvest and Plume,
Mhm.
and the other is the Cannabis Sessions. But Silly Cannabis is in there. So on Facebook, it's the Canna Sessions. Um, on Instagram, it's the Canna Session, or excuse me, Twitter, it's the Canna Sessions 1. And on Instagram, I believe it's Canna Sessions.
Yeah, and so for our listeners, make sure to like each of these pages and follow them on their different social media feeds. Great information that you can gather not only from the individual posts, but also the magazine, the digital publications that are there. And Kim, correct me if I'm wrong, but your publication, there is actually no type of subscription fee, right? It's pretty much great content that's there for interactive purposes for people who just click the link on each social media page.
Yes, for the first year, I made a commitment to myself that I would keep it completely free in terms of subscriptions, to not only get the knowledge out there, but to also garner attention to say, listen, there's a really good source of getting elevated information, and it's in a hopefully a palatable form. It's very pleasing to the eyes. So the first year commitment is to subscribe is completely free. I had something else I wanted to say, and now I totally forgot it. I do blame that on age.
It's always that Friday. It's 4 o'clock. We need to hurry up and get ready for the podcast. Let's do this. So Kim, want to thank you and thank all of our people, our listeners who are tuning in from the various platforms, whether you're listening in on YouTube. And Kim, remember, go ahead.
Hold on, don't let it leave yet.
Okay.
Please, everyone, for April, I told you I like to get some free things in there. So for April, one of the things we're celebrating is Take Your Daughter to Work Day.
Nice.
That's a legitimate holiday. So to do that, please, 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 I don't care what industry you're in, take a picture of you and your daughter, or maybe if you own the company, have a group picture, send it, have a little blurb or statement or a quote of why I brought my daughter to work or what I want her to learn. Those will all be in, including your brand. If it's representing your brand, please include your logo and your URL, and free.
Bingo. Awesome. I love it. So again, for our listeners tuning in from the different platforms, whether YouTube, Periscope, or Facebook, thank you for tuning in. And again, this is Carlos and Kimberly for another edition of our Speaking Bluntly podcast. And if you can, again, do us a favor, please like, share, and subscribe our podcast. I want to give a shout out to Rogue News, our primary site that's hosting most of our content right now for our YouTube platform. It's just a lot larger audience, so thank them for that. And then also for industry-related news, please go to rogue420.net, where you can learn everything. There's great tabs that are feeding. Those are RSS feeds that are piping in information, everything from advocacy news to industry news, hemp-related news. So check that out. And again, we appreciate you tuning in today to our Speaking Bluntly podcast. And Kim, thank you for a great show today.
Thanks so much. We'll see you next week.
Absolutely. And we'll be back next Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So thank you, Kim. Take care. Bye-bye.